Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's video where this week I will be bringing you guys along with me and Alex on our recent trip to Eryri National Park here in North Wales. And it was a special trip, photographically speaking, because I shot the whole trip exclusively on 35mm film using my Minolta X700 and shooting a film stock that I've never shot before. So my goal for this video is to have a look at the images, see what I think of the photos and that particular film stock, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my ethos and my approach to film photography and why I find it valuable and when I choose specifically to take a film camera out with me. So let's head to the mountains. So on the first night of the trip, we stayed at this lovely cabin outside of the town of Dolgellau. It was a beautiful location in the middle of a forest, and the views were just absolutely spectacular. So that first evening was just a case of chilling out. I managed to get the camera out and fired off a couple of shots. And speaking of the camera, I will mention the lenses as well. So I'm bringing with me only two, the 50mm, which is an f1.4, and a 70-200. But you can see from these first two photos that the 70-200 is having a little bit of trouble focusing. But we'll come back and talk about the quirks of that lens a bit later on in the video. So the first place we went to was the seaside town of Barmouth, a really quaint little town with some really nice views over to the distant mountains. The marina had so many photographic opportunities, but it was the boats with the mountainous backdrop that really caught my attention. I really wanted to take consideration in separating the boats as best as I could so they all had a bit of room in the frame. I find coastal locations tend to have a lot of variety in terms of photographic subjects, from traditional landscapes to scenes that are maybe more reminiscent of street photography. So this morning I've decided to stick with the 50mm lens just to give myself ultimate flexibility. This side of the marina offered a different vantage point on the town, so I wanted to shoot the boats again, but have the town as the backdrop instead of the mountains, and I decided to use the dune grass in the bottom of the frame just to help frame the boats, and I think this one turned out quite nice. I'm really enjoying the more neutral look that this film has. It doesn't seem to be overly stylized, and I thought I'd see how the film handled skin tone, so I asked Alex if she would kindly pose for a portrait, and I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. Again, the blues are really nice and soft, and skin tones and those kind of yellowy orange tones feel very natural and really complementary against that background. So good work, Kodak Color Plus. So we reached the end of the harbour wall, and this speed limit sign in the water really caught my attention just because the colours and the patina against the water was just really interesting. So I got a couple of variations on this subject. I really like the leading line of the submerged causeway and the mountains in the background. So we decided to leave Barmouth and venture further north up the coast. It was a beautiful drive with some really stunning views, and we were heading towards the town of Harlech. Now, Harlech is a very small town, but it's very famous for its castle, which dates back to the 1200s. But I decided photographically that I wanted to stray away from the castle and head more into the sort of quieter back streets. And I immediately found a subject that caught my attention. It was just this old garage with the broken wooden door and the orange traffic cones. I don't quite know what drew me to this scene. I'm thinking it was probably the colour. I think I wanted to try and test out the capabilities of this film with sort of different colours, and I quite like how this one turned out. We decided to carry on walking down the same street, and I'm really glad that we did because we came across this lovely row of cottages. The road was a nice leading line, and I used the power lines to frame the cottages and included some of those nice greens in the gardens in the sort of edges of the frame. And to my surprise, this road actually led to an interesting vantage point of the castle. I was reluctant to photograph the castle because it feels too much like a postcard, but this vantage point actually offered a unique perspective, and it utilised the more modern aspects of the town with the older features of the castle as the backdrop. I also liked how the power lines in this shot kind of framed the subject and further emphasised that contrast between new and old. As we headed back up the hill, I came across these gravestones that I found quite interesting. What I was really drawn to was the layers in this scene and the repetition of the rows of headstones looking out towards the distant landscape of the coast and the mountains. I also quite enjoyed, again, the telephone post and the wires. Again, it just adds some kind of framing to this particular shot. Seems to be a bit of a theme in these images from Harlech. After exploring the town, we decided to head to the beach at Harlech because it's one of the best in the area, with a great dune system and some really beautiful views over to the mountains. And now that the sun was out, I thought the beach would have a lot of photographic opportunity of just people, and to my surprise there really wasn't many. So I decided to take another portrait shot of Alex. Now this time I wanted to see how the film handled direct sunlight, because the previous one was when the conditions were a bit more overcast, and to my surprise it handled the scene really well. The colours look absolutely great in my opinion, and thank you again to Alex for being a good sport. Earlier I mentioned that this 70-200 lens seems to have some quirks, and that's because there were a few shots on this roll that I took with this lens that all came back really soft, and I've since realised that it was probably human error, because this shot of Alex on the beach I think is really great and has a really nice amount of sharpness and detail. I love how the telephoto focal length really compresses the scene and pulls those distant mountains really close in the frame to give them some real weight, and I just love how the colours in this shot are also really complementary, with the orange of the beach and Alex's linen trousers, complemented with how Kodak Color Plus seems to render shadows with that nice blue teal hue. I'm really impressed with how this film renders colours. So day 2 of our trip started with a hike, and we were following a trail called the Precipice Walk. So far we've photographed some portraits and some street style photos, but I was really hopeful that this walk would give me some opportunities to look at some more landscape subjects, such as this beautiful lone tree. Now, if you followed this channel for any length of time, you'll know that I'm passionate about landscape photography, so if I'm trying a new film stock, I'm always anxious to see how it deals with the natural landscape. Also, I had to stop and just say hello to these cows. The route that we're following is a fairly straightforward one. It's a 5-kilometre circular loop. It starts off in the woodlands where there's some beautiful old oak trees and dry stone walls, and as you gain elevation, it takes you up and over the ridgeline and you follow the estuary with some really stunning views that will knock your socks off. So whilst we're enjoying these frankly ridiculous views, I thought I would talk a little bit about my approach to film photography and why I've found it so valuable. Now, whenever me and Alex go on a trip, obviously the priority is to spend quality time together. But when you do go to new locations, it's only natural as a photographer to want to photograph it. And if I shoot digital, it's just so easy to fire off shot after shot every 5 minutes, and I find that I'm not always fully present in the experience, whereas if I'm shooting film and I have, on this trip, 36 photos to last me practically 3 days, it makes me, one, a lot more considered about what I shoot, and it means that I'm shooting far less often. That means I can be more present, and it actually means that I enjoy these trips a lot more because I'm actually fully experiencing them as opposed to just looking in a viewfinder the whole time. It also helps when your partner is artistic and therefore very understanding and incredibly patient. Also, let's take a second to appreciate how cool it is to see a Land Rover Defender in its natural habitat. And remember last week when I said that if I see a Land Rover Defender, I will take a photo of it? Well, it turns out that applies to film as well. Can't believe I took 3 photos of that. Now, my ethos for film photography is to keep it simple. I'm shooting everything on sort of automatic or aperture priority mode, so I'm just literally choosing the aperture and I'm letting the camera do the rest, with the exception of focusing, because all of my lenses are manual focus. But aside from that, it is a very automated process where I'm not really having to think an awful lot. It means that I don't need to worry about faffing with settings, and it just means that if I see a frame, I can take the photo within a matter of seconds instead of worrying about dialing in the exposure and getting a light meter and doing all those things that kind of take you out of the moment. On the final night of our trip, we stayed somewhere truly unique. This is Portmeirion, one of North Wales' biggest tourist attractions. It was made famous because a TV series in the 60s called The Prisoner was filmed here, and it's somewhere that is just unlike anywhere else in North Wales. The architect Clough Williams Ellis was clearly inspired by a lot of Italian architecture, and this has definitely a Mediterranean feel to it. Now, this isn't somewhere that I would typically want to photograph because normally it's just filled with tourists, but we were staying at the campervan park, which is attached to the property, and the actual cost was really reasonable, and it actually grants you access to the site after the doors close to the general public. So with all of this beautiful architecture, the fact that there are no people here, and the fact that it was a really lovely evening with some lovely light, I wanted to take this opportunity to photograph what is a truly unique place. The light is the main subject of this composition. I love the fact that you can't see where the light is coming from, and that adds a little bit of depth and mystery to the frame. A lot of people will choose film stocks based on the colour palette or how that stock interprets certain colours, and certainly with Kodak Color Plus 200 there's no better place to put that to the test than Portmeirion, with its really manicured, luscious gardens and painted exteriors. I think if you ever wanted to test the colour capabilities of any film stock, this is probably the best place to do it. Also, because the light was getting really nice, we had some clear skies that evening, so golden hour promised to be really beautiful. It was also a good opportunity to see how this film, this 200 ISO rated film, how it dealt with changing and dwindling light conditions. This shot might be my favourite on the entire roll for a few reasons. Firstly, compositionally, I really like how the estuary and those channels of water kind of lead into the frame. I like that there's a subtle subject, which is the lighthouse in the bottom right, and it's nice that there's a reflection of that lighthouse in the water as well. And the other thing that I love about this photo is just the tonality and the colour palette. I think everything here works so well. I love the fact that the shadows are a nice teal colour, and it's just really complemented against the nice orangey yellow colours of the sand. It's a colour palette that I think is really timeless and super versatile, and even in this shot where we're right before sunset and the light is fading, I think this 200 speed film has dealt with it really, really well. So guys, there we have it, my first roll of Kodak Color Plus 200. I would love to know in the comments below what you think of the images. Let me know if you've shot Kodak Color Plus, and I'd love to know what 35mm film stock you're enjoying at the moment, because yeah, I'm definitely on a bit of a film kick at the moment, and I'd love to feature some different film stocks on the channel. Another thing I would love to know your opinion on is just what you think of this form of video, just me going out with a GoPro, a little bit sort of like rough and ready, not necessarily too cinematic, but just kind of showing you guys my surroundings and what I'm taking a photo of. If you've enjoyed that format, then let me know and I'll be able to hopefully make some more videos of that kind moving forward. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today, then give the video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more and you want to support the channel, then do consider hitting the subscribe button and ringing the bell so you get notified of when new videos go live. Just so you know, new videos come out every week on the channel on a Wednesday, unless something goes wrong. So hopefully I'll be able to see you on the next one. Until then, take care, go out with your camera, maybe try some film photography. See you next week.